as long as it's an entertaining story, it doesn't matter how silly the dumb shit is. If you can get invested in it, I've been invested in so much dumb shit. Dogecoin. I told you I'd come up with something better.
Beautiful.
Let's be best friends.
Hello and welcome to Let's Be Best Friends, a podcast where I talk to people that I barely know, try and convince them to become my new best friends, because in times like these, who needs enemies? My guest today is a man who's been grinding the YouTube game for over 10 years now, a very funny stand-up comedian, and the host of multiple podcasts. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very proud to introduce Mr. Mike Falzone.
Hey, man.
Hey, what's up?
There was like no lead.
I know. I forgot that I was muted. I'll be completely honest with you.
So I'll tell you what I heard. Mr. Mike Falzone. I got an idea. I was writing down my idea that I just got, and then I hear
Mr. Mike Falzone.
I felt like I got in trouble in like
in school.
Grade school. Yeah. How are you? I'm going to finish this idea. You tell me how you are.
I'm good. Give me 1 second. People are saying they can't hear. Give me 1 second. Huzzah! Oh, lovely. I love that. Okay.
Did you guys not catch any of the funny shit I said?
No, they did not. Isn't that so sad?
That's a shame, but you know what? I'll come up with more.
Well, two comedians sit in a room and they cannot come up with anything funny to say.
Yeah, that's the rest of the show.
That's the real thing of the show.
Yeah.
I just get comedians on here and I lie about tech issues to see what they do.
Yeah. Does everyone try to be funny on this show, or are they themselves? That's my fault. That's my text tone.
It's funny because it depends. Because I find when I have comedians on, they're very chill. Like they're usually kind of out of persona and they just kind of like just doing their thing. And then if I have I've had wrestlers on and they are just in gimmick at all times. They're gimmicked out of their minds. Like they're doing a promo the whole time. And I'm just like, this is phenomenal. Like,
well, you got to sell it. You gotta give them something to come back and watch. I don't have a persona. I don't know what you're expecting, but this is, hey man, this is it.
It's great. It's two long-haired white guys with some semblance of facial hair talking. That's what the show is.
And there's no audience hungrier for just two things that two random bearded white guys have to say. This is the time.
This is the time for bearded white guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Our opinion is so highly valued.
There has never been a better time.
No, so, this is great.
Here on Let's Be Best Friends, if this is everyone at home's first time watching, and of course, Mike, this is, I'm sure, your first time being here on the show.
This is my first time watching and being here.
Here on the show, we like to do something with the guests, something that they are very into, like an activity that we can do together. And when I posed this question to you, you chose wrestling.
Yes.
I want to ask a little bit about that. Why wrestling specifically?
I love it so much. And I think the thing with nostalgic things is that it makes you feel like you felt when you were a kid, mm-hmm. and you're safe and life is simpler. And also wrestling is so goddamn zany that you could understand it and love it one way as a small child and love it in a completely different and unique way as an adult. Okay. So I feel like I've gotten to live everything over and understanding more about it and get the same amount of enjoyment that I did when I was a kid.
How often do you go back to the shows that you remember from when you were a kid? Like we're watching the main event of WrestleMania 5 today. How often do you go back to that old nostalgia point as opposed to the newer stuff?
Oh, so you know how people will just, especially now everyone's working from the house, mm-hmm. and you have something on in the background at all times.
Yeah.
I would say that nostalgic wrestling stuff from like the 80s and 90s is on daily. It's a daily occurrence.
It's just that's your background noise when you're doing other things.
Yeah. Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
Do you keep up with the current stuff?
A little bit. I watched the Royal Rumble because I thought that would be very interesting to watch them do that to, no one in live attendance. And it was very interesting. And I didn't think it was bad at all. I thought it was, I enjoyed it very much. I remember the new stuff isn't always my favorite. And I've watched some of it and kind of been bored, and I don't want to be, so I'll go watch something else. But every once in a while I'll check back in because I know just from being a fan for so long that things are going to change. And the stuff that I love watching now so much is when wrestling was so bad in like 1995 and like 1996 and right before like the Attitude Era when it was just like Doink the Clown and, Kona Crush and like just stuff when I was like probably, I don't know, between like 5 and 7. And I remember watching it like on Saturday mornings at my grandma's house and just seeing that shit as like a grown up it's crazy.
So where do you stand on the silliness of wrestling? It sounds like that's kind of your bag because 95 wrestling is like a garbage man fights a dude who is also a baseball. And like, that's the show.
Yes. Well, they had such a conflict of the baseball stole Bret Hart's jacket. You know what? I would like to say as long as it's an entertaining story, it doesn't matter how silly the dumb shit is. If you can get invested in it, I've been invested in so much dumb shit. Dogecoin. I told you I'd come up with something better.
Beautiful.
And so it's like, I don't know why I liked it when I was a kid, probably just because people were yelling and it was colorful, know, and they were fighting. But, you never know why something takes a hold of your like attention span, like it does.
Right.
I've gone back and I've watched, I used to watch religiously in the Attitude Era when everything was like very risque and stuff. And there were some cool stories back then, but there was also like a lot of horse shit you got to wade through, like terrible segments in the middle when it's just like only raunchy and degrading. And there's really no, like, just cause you're a teenage boy and you haven't really seen a naked girl yet. And there's one almost naked one on the TV. You're like, oh yeah, I love this. So it's never like, very rarely is all of one wrestling, time span, like great throughout, there's always like magic sprinkled in there. And it's like, that is the payoff to the commitment of watching, I think. And I don't always have that, but I like to be around when cool stuff happens, I suppose.
I feel like that's the thing that people forget because I feel like there's a lot of wrestling fans who will talk about how great it used to be and like that kind of thing, especially when it comes to the Attitude Era. And it's true when you think about it. I was doing the same thing that you were doing, but instead of doing like 80s and early 90s, I was doing like late 90s, early thousands wrestling because that's kind of where my thing started. And it's true. It's literally like the opening segment is great. It's like Stone Cold and The Rock and The Undertaker and Triple H and all the guys you like. And then there's like an hour and a half of complete horse shit. And then they show up again at the end and that's the show.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, remember this? And I'm like, no. No, it hits that sweet spot, I think. And marketing people would be able to talk about it better than we could. Right.
But it hits that sweet spot where like you're fucking, you're 12 to like 25. And like, that's what you love because that's what you watched when you were forming who you're going to be, and then because, people talk about the early 2000s and up through, like 2010 as like I wish wrestling was like that again. And like, that's when I stopped watching because I didn't like that.
Yeah.
So it's all lines up with like, you know, where you are in your personal development when wrestling is happening. It's all very subjective.
So we're gonna get into our WrestleMania 5 here. If anyone at home is watching live, you can hit !watching and you can get a link to what we're watching. Try and follow along if you can. If you're watching this if you listen to this as a podcast, don't worry about it. Don't even worry about it. But if you're watching it on YouTube, there will be a link somewhere, I'm sure. Probably. I'm a professional. Anyway.
It's good to tell them that.
Right?
So they know.
It's like marketing. It's like positive affirmation, right? They hear it and they're like, he is for sure.
Yes. Who was that guy I was watching? He was a professional.
He was a professional. Yeah. So I've got it open here. If we're gonna do old school MSN style. If you want to count us in, and we'll hit play at the same time.
Are we doing a 3, 2, 1 and then play is the play, or is the one the play?
Let's do play as the play.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, play.
Beautiful. I gotta say, going back and watching things like this, it reminds me of how much I love this kind of entrance, where it's just like there's no giant screens and pyro.
Yeah.
It's literally just Macho Man surrounded by security guards. There's something really cool about that.
I get the screen, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. I mean, the screen is there to kind of like show the audience different segments of the show.
Yeah.
And this is more like an event, like a boxing main event or something like that.
There's like that
Or like a
legitimacy
UFC thing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I wish they didn't have to show the audience stuff in the arena, or they could do it in some different way, like have the screen up somewhere else. Cause it does feel bigger when it's just like a dude, Yeah.
Like this. And especially in the 80s when everyone's just jacked out of their minds. It's just like, look at this massive son of a bitch. Is going to look at this other massive son of a bitch. And that's our main event.
Dude, but when you're there, you can really only see them if you're standing on the aisle.
Yeah.
Anywhere else in the arena, especially before they had the ramp, you're like, you don't even see a wrestler until they're in the ring on the turnbuckle.
Yeah.
Standing ahead of everybody else.
Did you ever go to events like as a kid at all?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. A bunch. My dad would take me, even though he hated it. Which I always, I was always very thankful for that. Mm-hmm. I used to go with friends every once in a while, but I was an only child. So if my dad wasn't taking me, I just wasn't going,
Yeah.
And he took me like back in the day. I don't remember. My first one was probably like 91, 92.
Mm-hmm.
So there was like that crop of people like Bret Hart and Yokozuna and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whenever that was, maybe 93-ish.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
And then, he kept taking me every once in a while. And then 1997, 98 rolled around. And then, Kane is coming out with like fucking fireballs and like, it's just so much different than my dad remembered it.
Yeah.
So he definitely wasn't psyched about it after a while.
He didn't like the fire?
Dude, you went from Bret Hart and Yokozuna to like girls flashing and Kane throwing fireballs and everyone getting flipped off, and
it was like South Park with real people.
Yeah,
it's insane.
It felt like I remember the Attitude Area, the area construction zone.
Yeah,
the Attitude Era felt like a riot could break out in the arena at any time.
Yeah.
It felt like very dangerous.
Yeah. It really was. It almost is like concerts, right? Like you go to like a concert for like a big band and it's pretty chill most of the time. But then if you go to like a random punk show, like some dude might just punch you in the face and you just have to be ready.
Yeah, that's part of it. And you assume that, that risk when you go in.
So I know you used to be a musician before you were a comedian, right?
Yeah.
And
how cool are those lens flares, by the way? Look at those. What is that? A 4-point lens flare at least?
And the funny part is
16-point.
The funny part is they're probably watching it like in the production truck and they're just like, oh fuck, look at all this Look at all this crap. Can we get rid of all this?
Yeah.
Like,
get away from the lights.
yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
No, it's okay. So did you ever go to like, what's your concert experience like?
What do you mean? Like, what concerts have I been to?
Yeah, so like, because I know as a musician, you go to just like all kinds of shit because you're just trying to get gigs everywhere, and like you go to here and there and everywhere.
Yeah.
But what's your kind of experience vis-a-vis that kind of thing? Like going to like a big band show versus like a little punk show. Have you ever been to like just one of those basement concerts with 15 dudes on heroin? Like,
oh yeah, like so many. I mean, like as a little kid, my uncle was in a Beatlemania band. Abbey Road, I think the name was. So
Beautiful.
some of my first concerts were like seeing my uncle dressed up like Paul McCartney being in a Beatlemania band.
Phenomenal.
So, you know, then my parents would take me to concerts. My parents had great taste in music.
Okay.
So they would take me to like Earth, Wind and Fire and Boyz II Men and awesome concerts throughout the 90s. Then I started getting a little bit older, would go to the Meadows Music Theater to see any number of bands. 104 Fest was huge in the Northeast, where you would go see all the rock bands. I saw Dave Matthews 10,000 times. And, you know, my mom took me to see Paul McCartney. She took me to see James Taylor. And then as a musician, there were years where, you know, I played 300 shows a year. So every night I would be at a different, you know, either where the rock groups were playing or at an acoustic show or everything. I feel like I've been to every type of music show.
What's your favorite kind of show to go to?
It really all depends, I guess, on what you're in the mood for. Because you could have a really loud, out of your mind, like sweaty, jumping around experience. And you could have a really quiet, nice, you know, storytelling acoustic experience.
Right.
And it really just, you know, your taste change. You need different things at different times, I suppose.
Yeah.
I miss being loud. I feel like being loud in a giant group of people is something that hasn't, you know, happened in a long time.
Yeah.
So I miss that. Yeah. So I guess that right now.
There's something fun about the escapism of going to a concert and like that. You're just in a crowd of like 100 or so other people just screaming absolute nonsense.
Yeah. And you all at least have like one thing in common.
Yeah.
You know, that's not like we, at the very least, we all like this band.
Yeah.
You know?
So growing up, are you a Savage kid or a Hogan kid? What's your flavor?
I was very, very much a Hulk Hogan youngster.
Right.
As I think like just the marketing worked really well. I think every kid who, you know, every guy around my age who was at all into wrestling, everyone knew who Hulk Hogan was, like, even if you weren't into wrestling. He was just like Mickey Mouse or Superman or whatever. Like everyone knew who Hulk Hogan was.
Right.
Which is crazy. So I kind of liked, I always liked the Macho Man very, very much. But when I was like really into it, he was a bad guy. So I wasn't sure that I was allowed to like him. And I had to go back and watch his old stuff to figure out how much I liked him.
Yeah. At what point did you get to that? Because I feel like every wrestling fan starts off as like, most of the time you're like a kid. And so you get into it and you're like the good guys. I cheer the good guys. I boo the bad guys. Fuck the bad guys.
Yeah.
But then as you get older, you start like that. You get your favorites where you're like, I don't really care if he's like, it's all kind of bullshit anyway. Like,
yeah.
Where did
as soon as you're like, when you get the rebellious stage going, like 13, 14, you know, when you start like not wanting to listen to everything your parents say and taking more risks and stuff like that, that's when you start to be like, yeah, well, what if, well, I like the bad guys instead. And my generation was very much like society wanted to root for the bad guys.
Yeah.
And that's why we had the NWO and Degeneration X were just like pieces of shit. At that time, you know, Hulk Hogan was one of the best bad guys in wrestling.
Yeah.
So it was like cool to cheer for the bad guys.
Yeah.
Then I think it probably bled over into, you know, that's just how pop culture was. I like how we're at Trump Plaza here. That's such a Donald Trump's like in the front row of this, this whole thing.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it until I saw the guys in the shirts, and I was like, oh, he's probably gonna get a shout out at some point. They're gonna be like, thanks to Donald Trump, because it's the 80s and no one knows yet.
I love that they took seats away from someone who would love to like a family or a kid who would love to be at ringside.
There's just Donald Trump looking bored.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of suits in the front row who don't really give a shit about whatever's going on.
No, they don't care. It's just at the casino.
Man, the 80s hit different, eh? Imagine being at a casino and they're like, oh, by the way, WrestleMania 5's in conference room B, if you guys want to go. Yeah. This is like playlist. It's like playlist live, but people doing this. Yeah, man, they probably gave a lot of those tickets to people at the casino. Just to make sure it was totally filled out, you know? Can you imagine?
Dude, but then going back to what you were saying before about Hogan being a piece of shit, it was like this whole storyline when it was like, is Hogan hitting on Elizabeth or is Macho Man like being overprotective, or is he being like just protective of his wife?
Yeah.
Or his manager or whatever.
Yeah.
Going back and looking at it after like the Hulk Hogan bad guy switch, you're like, I don't know, he was kind of being a piece of shit.
Yeah.
You know,
funny,
so you see Macho Man's,
It's funny. It's funny how I think the kind of really interesting thing to me about wrestling is that depending on your frame of reference, it's entirely different.
For sure.
Like when I was a kid, Bret Hart was like a piece of shit, but I'm Canadian.
Oh, wow.
So it's like, no, he's not. Like, I remember when I was like getting into it, I did that thing where I like, you know, when you like first get into it, you just want to watch wrestling like all the time and just get caught up. There's that match where Shawn Michaels like blows his nose in the Canadian flag and everyone's like cheering. And I'm like, no, fuck that guy. Like, that's my flag.
Yeah. But then you realize as a Bret Hart fan is that he was never a bad guy. He was just a bad guy in the United States.
Yeah.
Like he never did, you know, he never was like a piece of shit. He was always like fighting for like his family.
Yeah. Every time they try to present Bret Hart as a bad guy, he's either like that. He's either just sticking up for like his family members, or he's sticking up for like what's good and righteous. But it's like 97, so everyone's like, "Fuck that! We want to go like we want to spray paint a building or something." And Bret Hart's like,
exactly.
Don't do that.
That's the cool thing about being a Canadian Bret Hart fan is that you were always in the right the whole time.
Damn right. Canadians are never wrong. That's just a fact. In terms, especially in wrestling.
I actually know for sure that you guys are nice. You can have that. But you don't get that other shit that you said. I know too many Canadians who have been wrong before.
Nah.
But also nice. How close to Toronto are you?
I, in fact, am in Toronto.
Oh, awesome. Do you go to the Corner Comedy Club?
I do. I was going to ask you about that. What a beautiful segue. You recorded your album there.
Yes. I have an album called You Got Toes, and it was filmed there and recorded there. And came out a couple of years ago, and it's just one of the most fun nights of stand-up comedy I've ever had in my entire life. I love that place. I love all the comedians. I love Joe, who runs it. I've met great people there, and they have shows every night of the week. I don't know what the status is right now of you guys being
very
open
close.
Or very closed.
Everything is shut down still.
Right. I mean, it's such a small place that it was, you know, so easy to have a cool, really intimate time there. They had 2 locations. There was like an East and downtown.
Yeah. And were you at East? I think you were.
I was at both of them.
Okay.
And I filmed at both of them, but we kept the downtown, the first show at the downtown location. Yeah.
So tell me about that, because that's actually a big question for me, because you live in LA right now, I think.
Yeah.
Right? So you're doing all these shows in LA. You're going to like the Comedy Store and all these like famous places all the time. And you film in Toronto.
That was what the case was.
Yeah, obviously.
But what?
So you're living in California, which is like one of the big areas of comedy. So what makes it so that you're like, no, I want to film like that, like this very small, intimate show in a completely different country?
Well, so the first time I went over there was a few years prior to the taping, maybe 2 years prior to the taping. And I had, aside from just having an amazing time every time I've gone to Toronto for the past, I don't know, 5 or 6 years in a row before this year, just always an awesome time. You guys appreciate art so much in a way that even a lot of, I found that, parts of this country, it could be difficult sometimes. You just are really like, you want to go out and you want to have a good time and appreciate stuff. And it's very nice. You're very warm and receptive. And I just love that place. And that place had such a cool vibe. And I was like, I just know it's going to be good. I went up, we did like a ridiculous amount of shows, like 3 or 4 shows a night for a couple days. And it's just the best. Yeah. And I knew I was going to have a great time. So might as well film it there. LA is kind of the place where LA and New York, where you have shows every single night and several times a night if you're lucky, and you get really, really good. Like this is where you get good, and this is where you get like the television jobs or hosting jobs or whatever kind of things you could do with comedy. And then you tour and you kind of like showcase your hour or all the material that you've built up and that you've crafted here. And that's the best. You're doing like anywhere between 5 to 12 minutes a night here. And it takes you however long to get an hour. And then you get to take that hour on the road and do it all together. And it's awesome.
So how long were you in the game before you were like, I'm going to move to LA and like, I'm going to be a star?
No, man, I never thought that. I never wanted that for any reason. I always just wanted to make a living off of doing like art and making, if you can have an art that makes people laugh, like that's your job. I've had so many jobs where I've had way shittier jobs, but now my job is to make people laugh. So why not try to do a good job? I was, like you said, a musician for a real long time, probably since I was like 15 years old.
Wow.
And I moved out here when I was like 27.
Okay.
So I don't know, however that lines up. I've been out here for like 7 years now.
Okay.
So I was doing stand-up comedy for maybe, I don't know, because I did it really sporadically when I started because I was from Connecticut. So I had to take a train to New York City every time I wanted to go to an open mic or something like that. There was just no stand-up comedy in Connecticut at all. So I could do it once every couple of months, So is that like really being in it or whatever? So maybe, I don't know, maybe like 8 years in total. So let's say 1 out there and 7-ish out here.
So you're doing it in Connecticut and you were just kind of like getting frustrated because there wasn't enough, and then you moved to LA?
Yeah, there just was more opportunity out here, and I love that there's not a winter. I think that is great. I had so many winters, and now I don't feel like dealing with that anymore for the time being.
Not a snow guy, you are.
Not anymore. I mean, everyone will tell you that snow is great and it's beautiful. First couple times it happens, and then it lasts for a couple days, and then it looks like coffee cake on the side of the road, and then it looks disgusting, and then it stops you from doing stuff. And lame. Snow is lame.
Damn. All the Canadians in the audience are either, I find it's funny about snow is that people either are like they were born and raised with it and they either love it or hate it.
Yeah.
Or they've never seen it and they all are just like enamored by it.
Let me tell you something right now. If I had never lived a different life, a snowless life, I would 100% be on the side of like fuck you for not liking snow. Snow is beautiful. Snow is a gift.
Yeah.
But now I've lived over here where I could go out and do, not this year, obviously.
Yeah.
So this is the punishment for me thinking like this. But you could go like be super productive in the winter.
Right.
Where I know coming from the Northeast that there's like seasonal depression and stuff like that. And now like, I just don't have gray months where you have to stay inside.
Right.
And I was like, being the way that I am, I would so much rather, I'll be happier being productive.
Yeah.
You know,
that 5
but
or
we're all
6
inside
period.
Anyway. So fuck me.
You're right. You're getting punished.
Right. Right.
So we actually have a really good question from chat. So why LA and not New York? Because I feel like the comedy scenes are pretty similar, if not a little further to New York sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, it was, I never ever thought that I would live over here. LA, Chicago always seemed like they would be fun places to maybe go visit someday, but no matter what, I thought this all the way through growing up is that I would always go to New York. That's kind of like the thing in Connecticut. You're a kid and then you're like, when I'm 18, I'll be in New York City and then I'll be an adult.
I'm going to move to the big city and I'm going to make something myself.
Right.
Yeah.
With your little bag, your little handkerchief on your stick.
Yeah, your little bag.
But through doing music, I worked really hard, but I burnt myself out doing the Connecticut to New York City drive, and I just did too much, and I was kind of burnt out on New York City.
Okay.
And I didn't want to live there at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried Boston for a little while, for a little less than a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have a good time.
not a big Boston fan, Mike Falzone.
I love Boston. I just didn't have a good time. I wasn't in a good place.
Okay.
And then me and Zoya, who was we had been going out for maybe like a year at the time, moved out here. And it was just a completely different way of life. And
Right.
It was super nice out here weather-wise. And I could just work kind of all the time for better or worse.
Yeah, like
So
you said, no, like
just
downtime.
more opportunity. Yeah. Anytime somebody asked me to do something cool while I was in Connecticut, I always had to go to New York City.
Right.
So I knew I had to be in one of the cities.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, it always seemed so far-fetched for me to even visit out here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would visit and get these meetings and people would be like, well, you could have this job if you moved out here. And I'm like, really? And so I was like, it's still kind of my philosophy. As long as I'm like, can get work out here, I'll hang out,
I'll chill.
And then just the work changed. It changed from being more like SourceFed, hosty type stuff to, I got this chance to do voiceover for this TV show. And that's an opportunity that just would have never have happened had I not moved.
Right.
And then being able to, become a regular at some of the clubs in town is an honor that may or may not have happened in New York. Mm-hmm. It's kind of an honor to say that you kind of cut your teeth here and got good here. Same thing with New York, but it was just nice to go through like the stand-up experience and to learn the ins and outs and to earn your bumps in like a very thankless place.
So that's another good question. I love talking to comedians about their first bomb.
Oh, that happened way before I got to Los Angeles.
So either in Connecticut or New York or LA, what's your best memory of your just the first time you completely ate shit and were like, why am I doing this? I'm going to go become an accountant.
So it was probably one of the first times I ate shit, but it was in New York. Mm-hmm. And I lived in Milford, Connecticut, which is about, depending on which train you get on, like an hour and a half to 2 hour train ride into Manhattan.
Fuck.
And then it is either, a couple subway stops and you get to Long Island City. So tack another 45 minutes onto that trip. There was this place called the Creek in the Cave that just closed down in the pandemic, which is really sad, but it was the first place I ever did stand-up in New York.
Right.
Because I had really good friends there who did like UCB, and then they were and are still great stand-ups who invited me on shows back then.
Right.
I had done stand-up once for the first time to a bunch of my friends in Stratford, Connecticut, in my hometown. And it went really well because it's a bringer show for your friends.
Yeah,
you know,
so
they're just excited to see you up there.
Yeah.
Right. So the first time I tried to bring some of that material to Long Island City, it was deafening silence for the entire. I'm sitting here thinking like, my first show ever, I did 15 minutes to an uproarious like 150 people. Now I'm with 35 people who don't give a fuck about me at all.
Yeah.
And just want to hear good jokes. And all my New York friends are killing because they have, you know, they have good jokes. And then I get up there with my stupid shit material and hear nothing. And now I got to get on the train and suffer through it and just think about that in silence for another 2 hours home.
And did you record your sets back in those days?
No way.
No.
Because our phones would have sucked.
Right.
Like we didn't have great phones.
Right.
My first set ever is filmed, and I did a video on my YouTube channel where I watch it and like react to it because it's the internet.
You got it. That's that fucking content.
I mean, obviously you record all of them now because it's the fastest way to get better. But sometimes I wish I had it just to hear how fucking cringy it must have been. It must have been terrible.
What do you think? Do you think so for a new comedian? Because like when I was just getting in, it was like the best advice anyone gave was always like record everything and like listen to it like 20 times until you can make it funny. Like especially if it's a bad show, listen to your bad shows all the time.
Oh yeah.
Do you think it's do you think it's better now that we're all recording our shows and getting depressed when we get home? Or when we have the concept of like, that was a bad show, but you can kind of push it away?
Oh, no. It's always better to, there's this dude, Brian Simpson around here, who is an amazing comedian. And he did a tweet sometime last year that was like, if you're not listening to your shows, then subconsciously, like, you know, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
And all that matters. I've gotten caught up in so much like shit. I try to like keep the straight and narrow, but it's like you get caught up in just different drama and different clicks. And as soon as you narrow in on the only thing that matters is like how nerdy you are about your set and how good you are, because you will earn other people's respect. If people see you kill in a room, you just earn other comedians' respect because everyone's trying to do the same thing to different degrees, you know? So the nerdier you are about your set and the more you force yourself to listen to bad shit, it might suck, you know, at the moment listening to it.
Right.
But you know, you're a comedian, so you're always thinking, if you hear something, you're thinking of ways to make that funnier or a tag that you can add on it. If you remove yourself a little bit and then listen to your own stuff and constantly make it better and tweak it a little bit every night, your set's going to get to the point where you're so excited to do it, you're having a good time all the time.
Right.
And that like fucking 5 minutes of anxiety or whatever, listening to it back is like, you're buying yourself so much more fun later on down the line.
Yeah.
And it could come so much quicker if you suffer through your dumb shit.
So do you think that would be your biggest advice to like a starting out comedian? Or do you have like a piece of advice that you would give someone who is just starting on the scene?
Best piece of stand-up advice I ever got.
Okay.
That's a 4-point lens flare. Best piece of stand-up advice I've ever got was, as a host, I was nervous about hosting for the first time. And I asked my buddy, and he said, if you have fun, it gives everyone else permission to have fun.
Okay. And
I've thought about that before every set I've done since I heard that advice. Because it's the most like, even, and you know this from watching other comedians, even if your jokes are bad, if you're genuinely having fun, everyone in the room wants to have fun with you.
Right.
You know, they're coming out of their house specifically to a comedy show because they're in the mood. They want to laugh.
Yeah.
That's why I can't stand people like, oh, this fucking crowd and whatever. Sometimes they're weird for whatever reason. But they always at least came out with the goal of laughing. So if you're up there and you're having a great time, then it's going to make them let loose and you guys are going to have a great night together.
Right. So just have fun with it.
Yeah, it sounds like such basic fucking like intramural soccer advice.
Go out there, have a good time. We'll get you your orange slices on the way out.
Yeah. Everyone gets slices if you have fun.
As long as we can tell, you have to clap this much to get an orange slice.
Right, exactly.
I love that as advice, and I hope that anyone listening to this does actually take that advice, because I feel like sometimes people get lost in it, and I don't know if you can speak to this at all, but I feel like sometimes people can get lost in the concept of wanting to be the best or wanting to make it to a point where they stop having fun and they stop creating things that they enjoy. They're just creating things because they think they have to. Yeah.
I mean, it's hard sometimes once you start making money and then your living depends on that. That kind of changes things and it puts more weight on things. Mm-hmm. Plus, as an artist, if you always want to keep bettering yourself as an artist, you know, your greatest competition or whatever. So there's always like a pressure to keep making everything better than it was, you know, and longevity with that philosophy is it's heavy.
Right.
But I mean, you try to remember that the way I do it is say that there's so many jobs that I could do that aren't fun.
Right.
And I get to do this one, you know?
Yeah. So
it's like, why would you not like try as hard as you can to keep the most fun job that you have?
So before we get into our final segment, what's the least fun job you ever had? Now I'm curious.
There was, so before I even tell the story, I'm going to say I was very thankful for this job.
Right.
It paid really well. And this is like my first year out of college.
Right.
Right.
We love a good caveat.
Yes. And I think my aunt got me the job and I'm very thankful to her to this day. Thank you very much.
If you're listening at home, which we know you are, big fan of the show.
She's not, but she would if she knew what was happening. So she got me this job. It was called an ingest operator.
Okay.
And I basically I took tapes from a couple different channels, like the History Channel and A&E, and I put them in this VCR and I basically digitized them because it was at the beginning of like, you know, tape libraries being digitized.
Right.
So for 8-9 hours a day, all different shifts, overnight shift, whatever, I would be doing this in a room with 6 other people. Everyone has their headphones on. No one talks to each other.
Right.
And I'm just watching like old A&E shows, old history shows. And then we finished all the English dubs and we had to do it in Spanish. And so I watched like the Spanish versions of like, here's a show about water in ancient Greece in Spanish that was made in like 1989 or whatever. And so you had to like check these tapes for mistakes and stuff like that. And I remember the best part of my day was when I used to go to the coffee machine and I used to sweeten my coffee with powdered hot chocolate mix. And that was the best part of my day.
That's how you're getting through your day. Just putting hot chocolate in your coffee.
And I remember thinking, it's over. I graduated college, and that's why everybody says like college is the most fun you'll ever have in your life.
Right.
I said, the party is over.
Yeah.
And this is what work is From now on, I sit in a room with 6 other people. I don't I don't know these people's names. And I just watch the Spanish dubbed version of these old history shows for the rest of my life until I die.
This is what everyone goes through.
I thought was going to be the rest of my life.
Yeah. I think that's just the plot of the B movie. I think that's what you just went through.
Yeah. And then, when you get to be a comedian after that, you're like, okay, I'll just work as hard as I can to never have to do that.
Yeah, I never want to drink coffee and hot chocolate ever again.
No, I will if I have to, but I don't want that. I don't want that.
How long were you there for?
Not very long, maybe a year. Imagine. The thing was, to be honest, they paid crazy good.
Oh yeah. And shitty jobs always do.
Yeah. And I was making I was making more than my friends were all like accounting majors and like business majors and got jobs at like hedge funds and shit like that. And I was like the film guy. So I was like, what the fuck am I going to do? And then my aunt got me this great job and I was making more than them like right out of the gate. And they passed me for the rest of my life and just kept going, Yeah. But, it enabled me to move out of the house for the first time. And we got an apartment, 4 or 5 of us in Stamford, Connecticut. We lived in like a duplex. Nice. And, being able to like have that freedom and then like go tour around and do acoustic music tours while that was happening. That was just like the goddamn best. I was like, dude, I live on my own and I get to like tour and perform and I get to have this job where I don't I'm not fearing for like my next meal all the time. Like I was in college or whatever. Yeah.
The pressure of income is kind of gone, but it is in the sphere of this absolutely shitty job that you hate.
Yeah. There was always a give and take. There's always some shit you got to put up with to get to the good stuff.
I think that's just like art, man. That's just, if anyone says it's not, they're just lying.
Yeah. That's true.
I have had so much fun. I hope you have too. We're going to get into our last segment here. It's called the lightning round. Okay. And the reason we call it this is I'm going to put 1 minute on a timer and I'm going to ask you as many this or that questions as I can get through in that minute with the goal of seeing how close we've become to becoming best friends.
Okay. That sounds good. Yeah.
So I've got my beautiful legal notepad that I definitely did not steal from the Staples I worked at.
This is discoverable content.
Yeah.
So they'll come after you for that.
It's fine. Someone I used to work with does watch this show. So we just say, no narcs, no narcs. That's the number
F's
one
in the chat.
F's in the chat, no narcs. Got my pen. Let me, okay. I've got my timer ready. I've got my questions open. If you're ready to go, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I'm ready.
In 3, 2, 1, cookies or cake?
Oh, cookies.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Computer games or console games?
Console games.
Pop music or rock music?
I don't know, man. Skip.
Stuffed animals or dolls?
I don't know. Stuffed animals?
Nice. Pancakes or waffles?
Pancakes. Get the fuck out of here.
Oh my God. Okay. Hot chocolate or coffee?
Coffee.
Morning or night?
Morning.
Text message or call?
Text message.
Libraries or museums?
Museums.
French or Spanish?
Spanish.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
Love or money?
Love.
Books or movies?
Books.
Books it is, and that is the last question in our minute.
How do we do?
What is the vendetta on waffles before we get into the score? I'm just curious. I just want to know.
I think waffles are so close to being perfect.
Okay.
Waffles are a beautiful thing. If there's a Belgian waffle machine at like the continental breakfast area of a hotel, that's what a treat at the end of a buffet line. What a treat.
Right.
Okay. Pancakes are the penultimate breakfast food.
All right. I'm listening.
Everything else is fine. What a treat to have everything else. Pancakes are top of the pops.
They're just the absolute top of your breakfast tier list.
Yes.
Phenomenal. I am going to score our questions here. While I do that, I want you to take this time, tell the good people at home who are listening what you're doing, what you're up to, and where they can find you.
Oh my good gracious. So many things. And I know from being on the internet for a long time that the more things you give people to do, the less things they will actually do. So I'll say this. Obviously I'm everywhere. So if you want to find me, it's Mike Falzone everywhere. My favorite thing right now is probably Instagram. So I have an Instagram at my name, and I have a photography Instagram at Mike Photography. So that's where you could find me. What am I doing? I'll tell you. My friend Olin Rogers has a show called Final Space. It's in its 3rd season on TBS, HBO Max, Adult Swim, all that stuff. It's going to be on Netflix eventually, maybe. I don't know how that stuff works out, but it's season 3, and I'm on that. So there's that. If you're not a TV person, but you love YouTube, I've been on YouTube since the goddamn beginning of time. And I have a show called Mike in the Morning, and it's my favorite thing to make. What else do I make? 2 podcasts. There's one with my wife called Welcome to Our Podcast. There's one with one of my best friends, Steve Zaragoza, and that's called Dynamic Banter. Did I give you everything? Knowing that you won't do any of it? Absolutely. But that's the truth. And I live my truth.
That was single-handedly the best plug I've ever heard. Fuck the show. That is the best plug I've ever heard. Beautiful.
Well, there's nothing like knowing what you do.
I pray one day that I have a succinct pitch as that. I want to let you know that in our lightning round, we scored a total of 6 out of 13. And here's the thing, is that like most Cosmo this or that questionnaires, this is complete horseshit and has nothing to do with our actual aptitude to be friends. Other than pancakes worth waffles. That is a line. Unfortunately, I don't know if we can continue being best friends.
That's fine. I have a slogan that I live by, and that's no new friends. So I've had a great time here today, but I'm totally fine with however this goes.
This is our first breaking scoop. Apparently, so Drake stole that from you.
No, I just subscribe to it.
Subscribe to it. And speaking of subscribing, if you enjoyed the podcast you just listened to, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Mike Falzone for being on the show. It's been a pleasure. It's been a joy. If you enjoyed what you're listening to right now, if you're watching right now live on twitch.tv/OldKingCake, then why don't you follow and do all those cool things? Also, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. My Twitter and Instagram isn't as cool as Mike Falzone's. I don't get to have my real name. It's OldKingCake. Absolutely everywhere. You can also go to oldkingcake.com, score. And you can find this podcast wherever you find podcasts or on YouTube. Also, hey, guess what? We have a merch store. What up? And you can go to oldkingcake.com to find that. Make sure you check out our guest, Mike Falzone, and all of his social medias at Mike Falzone. Make sure you check out his multiple podcasts, his TBS show, all the beautiful things he's got going on. I personally want to thank our best friends, Isabel Wing and Seth Feldman, for the intro and outro to our show, Let's Be Best Friends. And that is all the time we have for this week. So remember that your mom was your best friend at one point. So give her a call, and we'll see you guys next week.